wake up every morning still tired. You grab some food, but you still end up hungry. You take a shower and scream for 5 minutes in angst at existence. You go to work, for a time only to leave exhausted and return home unsatisfied. You eat. Spend the rest of your night just staring for a while, before going back to sleep. Then you repeat. Repeat. Repeat this endlessly, till your dying breath. What was the point of any of it? From birth to death? Was it just a blip? Forgotten as if it never mattered? Is there a point? Or is it all nihil? Nothing. Why even get out of bed?
There's no meaning to any of this. Gotta admit, it's completely meaningless. I don't care. But there is no meaning. Just things happening. And there are clusters of tetrahedrons moving around together. Here's the thing, it's not our world.
None of this is real?
Nope.
So you're just passing
We don't
through?
matter. We don't matter.
Oh, wow.
There's the good news.
Nihilism is typically defined as a belief in nothing. Depending on a person's flavor of nihilism, nihilists don't believe in objective morality, no good or evil. There is no objective knowledge, no truths, no falsehoods. There is no reason to even exist, because we are all going to be dead in the end. The universe is, and beyond that, nothing. No order, no structure, no design, no purpose. Is it truly all for naught? Nothing matters. But there is an underlying presupposition that is prior to believing in nothing, and that is a willing towards nothingness. Nihilism was first used by German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who used the term to describe the transcendental idealism of Immanuel Kant. According to Jacobi, Kant's philosophy will lead to everything being known, leaving nothing left to believe in, and no mysteries left to search for. Jacobi saw nihilism as leading us towards inaction, where nothing is done. Other nihilists include Russian novelists like Ivan Turgenev, who used the term to describe the disillusionment of the youth towards both progressivism and traditionalism. Arguably the best thinker on nihilism was 19th century German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche, a miserably cantankerous individual whose life was burdened by excruciating stomach and migraine pain, and who died in a madhouse unable to feed himself, said there were different stages to nihilism, but all of them relied on a willing towards nothing. In our previous video, we analyzed how most religions and philosophies are nihilistic because the people who believe them are willing towards nothing. Even modernity didn't escape this phenomena. But modernity also inaugurates a new, higher form of nihilism. Friedrich's proclamation of the death of God is the realization that all values that we believe to be eternal, true, good, beautiful, divine, necessary, and so on and so forth, are none of these things. God doesn't exist, and neither do all the truths and morality that come with him. All of these things are merely our creations, and are therefore contingent, transitory, and can be easily overthrown. This realization has a profound effect on a person, oftentimes a deep pessimism or existential crisis. Nothing matters. The appearance of a new type of nihilism, one which goes beyond a mere willing towards nothingness, occurs with the death of God, first proclaimed by Nietzsche in Aphorism 125, The Madman, in the 1882 book The Gay Science. We've already talked in great detail about the many meanings behind this aphorism in another video, so if you haven't yet, stop everything you're doing and watch that, then come back here, but not necessarily in that order. But what is God to Nietzsche? What exactly has died? Nietzsche describes God generally as, quote, the name for the realm of ideas and ideals, and specifically as, quote, the last, thinnest, emptiest concept, placed as the first, as cause in itself, as ens realissimum, or the realist being. So what has died is the realm of ideas, and more importantly, their influence on us. Philosopher Gilles Deleuze says of modern nihilism that it, quote, is no longer the devaluation of life in the name of higher values, but rather the devaluation of higher values themselves. Kant's continued reliance on eternal a priori concepts is a continuation of practical nihilism. But Kant goes further than any of his predecessor and inaugurates a higher history than any history hitherto. There are phenomena, the mere appearance of things acquired by our imperfect senses and categorized by our limited, puny understanding, and the noumena, the thing in itself that is the true, objective actuality of a thing which we have no access to. When it comes to morality, Kant simply says we have a duty to be good, not to God or even ourselves, but to reason itself, the so-called categorical imperative. Kantian morality doesn't even provide us a reward for good behavior. Kant demands a complete excision from any bodily joy. If you enjoy doing good, well, it's not immoral, but it's also not moral, but amoral. You have to stand there with no emotion whatsoever and tell the Nazis there are Jews in your attic because reason dictates objectively that lying is wrong. The eternal forms of Plato could still be achieved by the wise philosopher king and through the Platonic love with teenage boys. Heaven was attainable to those that followed the ascetic ideals of Christianity. But with Kant, the horror of horrors is realized. The actual world, the real, is forever beyond our grasp. Even the empty promise of an afterlife has been taken away. We are forever trapped in the apparent world, but after over 2,500 years of degrading the sensual for the spiritual, it is a world which cannot bear the burden of objectivity. 20th century German philosopher Martin Heidegger said of nihilism, quote, "The supersensory is transformed into an unstable product of the sensory, and with such a debasement of its antithesis, the sensory denies its own essence. The deposing of the supersensory does away with the merely sensory and thus with the difference between the two. The deposing of the supersensory culminates in a neither nor in relation to the distinction between the sensory and the non-sensory. It culminates in meaninglessness. It remains nevertheless the unthought and invincible presupposition of its own blind attempts to extricate itself from meaninglessness through a mere assigning of sense and meaning." All of the transcendent values created by Socratic nihilism and cemented by Christianity have now been devalued. If objective truth and morality no longer exist, do we not live in absolute relativism, where truth and morality cease to have any meaning? For if all truths and values are equal, then they may as well be equally nothing. Fyodor Dostoevsky famously said, "If God is dead, then everything is permitted." If objective morality doesn't exist, how do we maintain that rape, pedophilia, torture, cannibalism, school shootings, terrorism, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth, are wrong or undesirable, that we ought not do them? Of course, everything is permitted with a living God as well.
Any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
Oh my God.
رعبا من شمالها إلى جنوبها ومن شرقها إلى غربها.
Modernity claims that all humans are equal, a notion which is profoundly Christian. Friedrich was famously anti-egalitarian. Egalitarianism, or the idea of equality, are deeply antithetical to Friedrich's philosophy. Unfortunately, his anti-egalitarianism has led many conservative and fascist groups openly embracing Nietzsche, despite him also being hostile to the modern state, nationalism, racism, and anti-Semitism. It's worth looking at Friedrich's critique of equality and perform a genealogy of the concept. As Kuck Philosophy said in his book on Nietzsche and Marx, quote, "Such a view, egalitarianism, emerged through a synthesis of Christianity, all individuals possessing a fundamentally equal soul that is independent of all particular properties and empirical circumstances, and capitalist ideology, all individuals being equal in their capacity as rights holders, contract signers, transactional agents." The presupposition of equality is that there are pre-made individuals that can exist absent of any social conditioning, which, to put it mildly, is a little silly. Liberal theory will state that all people in modern capitalist society have a right to equality of opportunity. However, there is no guarantee of equality of outcome. Yet, equality of opportunity and equality of outcome are self-perpetuating. Those individuals born into a wealthy, alabaster families have greater access to opportunities than their impoverished peers, and because of that greater access to opportunity, have better outcomes. In reality, individuals only exist because they are constructed out of society, something the vulgar objectivists, those sycophantic followers of Ayn Rand, seem unable to comprehend. With the death of God, humans themselves must take God's place as the creator of values. Humanity itself is viewed as an end. This is not inherently bad, as this entire time humans always were the ones who created values. But it becomes a problem when humanity itself is viewed as an end, as a finished project, as a ready-made ideal. We've revealed the finale of history, of civilization. There's nothing left to do. Zarathustra says, quote, "One still works, for work is a form of entertainment, but one is careful lest entertainment be too harrowing. One no longer becomes poor or rich, both require too much exertion. Who still wants to rule? Who obey? Both require too much exertion. No shepherd in one herd. Everybody wants the same. Everybody is the same." Friedrich's fear of theoretical nihilism is not that everything is permitted, but that nothing will be done, nothing will be overcome. Humanity does not want to create or affirm new values. Everywhere theoretical nihilism repeats the same. With sameness, mediocrity, and passivity, the last person appears, not the last man, because #feminism. The last person says we have invented happiness, and nothing more needs to be done except think about this invention, this end, this goal. We have a goal in our modern nihilistic society, a certain goal shared by everyone. A spouse and a house with a mouse or more. The middle class, an American dream, provides a little mildness, peace, and kindliness in thought and action. The logic of the last person soothes and gives confidence in a world without meaning, and the last person's goal provide a, quote, certain warm, fear-dispelling narrowness, an imprisonment within optimistic horizons. There is an inevitability that comes with the last person. If history is automatic, a foregone conclusion, then it doesn't require anyone to do anything. There is no need for action, for resistance, for fighting or defending. The intellectual horizons of the last person are defined only in terms of a shallow happiness of material comfort and spiritual complacency. Any type of suffering, unhappiness, discomfort, anything which might limit a person's will, might force them to overcome themselves, must be banished. The collapse of a foundationalist project means all goods are simply subjective preferences. Therefore, the only objective good is everyone is of equal worth. The only objective truth is all truths are equal. Egalitarianism is one of the main concepts wielded by the last person. Another of Friedrich's critique of egalitarianism is, if all values are equaling nothing, if there is perfect equality in society, then there is nothing to overcome. Absolute or negative relativism reduces all values to nil, to zero. In the absurdist movie Fight Club, the unnamed narrator, a literal everyman who is no man, works for an unnamed automobile company. He inspects car accidents, events which are chaotic, tragic, and unique in their damage, in order to apply a simple mathematical equation. Is it worth it? Turns out, it usually isn't.
On a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone drops to 0. I was a recall coordinator. My job was to apply the formula.
Here's the infant went to the windshield. 3 points.
A new car built by my company leaves somewhere traveling at 60 miles per hour. The rear differential locks up.
The teenager's braces are wrapped around the backseat ashtray. Might make a good anti-smoking ad.
The car crashes and burns with everyone trapped inside. Now, should we initiate a recall?
The father must have been you. Did you see where the fat's burned to the seat? The polyester shirt? Very modern art.
Take the number of vehicles in the field, A, multiply it by the probable rate of failure, B, then multiply the result by the average out-of-court settlement, C. A times B times C equals X. If X is less than the cost of a recall, We don't do one.
Are there a lot of these kinds of accidents?
You wouldn't believe.
Which car company do you work for?
A major one.
Friedrich not only critiques liberalism, but capitalism as well. In The Gay Science, Friedrich says, quote, "The busiest of all ages, our age, does not know how to make anything out of its great diligence and wealth, except always more and more wealth, and more diligence, and more industriousness." In speaking about capitalists and the capitalist state, he says, quote, "Nowadays, the crudest and most evil forms, the egoism of the moneymakers and the military despots, hold sway over almost everything on earth. In the hands of these despots and moneymakers, the state certainly makes an attempt to organize everything anew of itself, and to bind and constrain all those mutually hostile forces. That is to say, it wants men to render it the same idolatry they formerly rendered the church." In describing the cultural effects of capitalism, he says in his untimely meditation, Schopenhauer as Educator, quote, "The greed of the moneymakers demands a speedy education so that one may quickly become a money-earning being, yet at the same time an education sufficiently thorough to enable one to earn a very great deal of money. And man is allowed only as much culture as it is in the interest of general money-making and world commerce he should possess. Today's education strives to make as many human beings as possible culturally bound to capitalism, to view capitalism as a natural, necessary, and moral system. Education is typically not viewed as an exploration of self and knowledge, but specifically as an investment towards some semblance of success within capitalism. In capitalism, all things become equal, not quantitatively, but qualitatively. Under capitalism, all things can be subjected to the ultimate axiom, exchange value. The value of everything can be reduced to an arbitrary exchange value for the purpose of creating more value. Humanity only finds value in the consumption of exchange value, which drives capitalism further. Capitalism begets more capitalism. While this may seem like the principle of the will to power, to continuously overcome itself by willing more, that Nietzsche so fervently espouses, it remains a reactive willing by humanity. We are not commanding, we are obeying this thing of our own creation, and we are doing so because this image of value, exchange value, claims it is the one, the true, the good, and so on and so forth. The unnamed narrator of Fight Club attempts to find novelty through capitalist consumption.
I'd like to order the Erica Picari dust ruffles. If I saw something clever, like a little coffee table in the shape of a yin-yang, I had to have it. The Klipsk personal office unit, the Hovatrek home exerbike, or the Yohanneshav sofa with the string green stripe pattern. Even the Rizlampa wire lamps of environmentally friendly unbleached paper. I'd flip through catalogs and wonder, what kind of dining set defines me as a person? I had it all. Even the glass dishes with tiny bubbles and imperfections, proof that they were crafted by the honest, simple, hard-working indigenous peoples of wherever.
But such a willing towards nothingness leaves him ill-constituted, for it is an endeavor which remains anti-life.
For 6 months, I couldn't sleep.
You can't die from insomnia.
What about narcolepsy? I nod off, I wake up in strange places, I have no idea how I got there.
You need to lighten up.
Can you please just give me something? Red and blue 2-in-alls, lipstick red second-alls.
No. You need healthy, natural sleep. Choose some valerian root and get more exercise.
Hey, come on. I'm in pain.
The herd longs desperately for something stable in a meaningless and chaotic world. We find ourselves content with our gadgets and symbols, more than happy to replace them with near replicas. The herd that follows, for instance, the Apple logo, obeys the command of Apple. Obey the Apple. We will tell you when to overcome, how to adapt, what you like and don't like, what to believe. Friedrich says, quote, "Belief is always most desired, most pressingly needed when there is a lack of will. For the will as the emotion of command is a distinguishing characteristic of sovereignty and power. That is to say, the less a person knows how to command, the more urgent is his desire for that which commands and commands sternly. When a man arrives at the fundamental conviction that he requires to be commanded, he becomes a believer. Modernity, nihilism, capitalism, what have you, ultimately just creates a world which humanity can kneel to. Our contemporary world of algorithms control every aspect of our lives. Twitter and Facebook gives us feeds that it says we want to see. Amazon and Spotify have curated sections titled For You. It's FUBU, you see, for us, by us. All our decisions have already been made for us. Philosopher Liv Agar says it far better than I can.
One's social world, their political identity, their understanding of events, their sense of community, and their tastes in music are all provided to one by machines. Without these machines, we are nothing. The various attributes and virtues that describe what truly defines an individual are served to them on a platter by advanced systems of algorithms designed to turn them into perfect little consumers. This is combined with a perceived sense of choice, of course. You have 5 or 6 options to pick from the algorithmically determined set. One may tell themselves they have freedom, and by this I mean an effect on the world through actions and beliefs, and yet they have nothing. In this process, no level of originality is required. One simply begins consuming and then never has to stop. What other medium provides for better judgment of others' virtues than on the internet, where virtue is determined by a consumption pattern? It seems that more and more of our identity becomes entirely rendered by silicon.
Capitalism is the process of theoretical nihilism. Capitalism continuously replaces values, overcomes itself. Some do believe that the axioms of capitalism are in fact permanent, natural, and good. But for those that know better, their actual impermanence is the source of existential angst. We obey capitalism. Capitalism overcomes itself, but we do not overcome capitalism or ourselves. Values are overcome, but not our values, for capitalism constantly returns us towards the same, empty exchange value.
Your father was seduced by the dark side of the Force. He ceased to be Anakin Skywalker and became Darth Vader. When that happened, the good man who was your father was destroyed. So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
Throughout Nietzsche's works, nihilism seems to be given the value judgment of bad. It is an undesirable condition. Theoretical nihilism, the devaluation of the highest values, is certainly bad for the believers in a monotheistic deity like Zoroastrianism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It also appears bad for the Enlightenment, to humanists, to metaphysicians, idealists, and most thinkers of modernity. All of these beliefs presuppose a kind of objectivity, but nihilism makes objectivity impossible. There are those that react resentfully to nihilism by becoming pessimists, like Arthur Schopenhauer. But Friedrich wants us to lean into nihilism, to affirm nihilism within ourselves, to accept that all values must be overcome eternally. Nietzsche's project is the eternally recurring revaluation of all values because the objective I is a myth. Quote, "Here it is always demanded that we think an I that cannot possibly be thought, an I that must not have any direction, in which the active and interpretative forces through which seeing first becomes seeing something are to be shut off, are to be absent. Objectivity is impossible. Subjectivity is necessary. Subjectivity throws us into relativism, but this isn't the negative relativism we spoke of earlier, where all truths and moral are equally true and valid, and therefore equally meaningless. This is a positive relativism, or what Friedrich calls perspectivism. We talked about perspectivism a little bit in this video on famous singer and convicted pedophile Robert Sylvester Kelly. Nietzsche's point here is there is no knowledge, no I, no objectivity that has no specific perspective. Any objectivity that amounts to a disinterested contemplation is both a non-concept and absurdity. All perspectives are finite and only show a limited view. Quote, "There is only a perspectival seeing, only a perspectival knowing." As literally everything Nietzsche, his perspectivism is based on the existential principle of the will to power. There are no equal wills. There are strong wills and weak wills, and similarly strong perspectives and weak perspectives. As we saw in the R. Kelly video, there is a battle between perspectives, and strong perspectives subsume weak perspectives, making weak perspectives obey the commands of the strong perspectives. Because there is no equality, there is nothing but difference. The world is meaningless until we apply meaning to it. The cosmos is, to all eternity, chaos, and the will to power grasps onto differences in order to preserve and enhance itself, in order to keep willing. The nihilists of Western civilization have been precisely this crushing of difference, of the world, and of life. Plato's forms crushed the difference of the sophists. Christianity crushed the difference of the seven devils, the heretic, the witch, the soothsayer, the fool, the doubter, the unholy one, and the villain. And modernity crushes the difference of the insane, the irrational, the hysteric, the savage, and so on. Friedrich doesn't want an eye with no perspective, or only one perspective. He vaunts as many perspectives as possible. Quote, the more affects we allow to speak about a matter, the more eyes, different eyes, we know how to bring to bear on one and the same matter. That much more complete will our concept of this matter, our objectivity, be. The absolute subjectivity that Friedrich demands is more objective than the most rational and pure of objectivities of modernity. The more perspectives we have at our disposal, the greater the chance we will find the correct solution to a current and temporary problem. Friedrich wants us to have, quote, the capacity to have one's pros and contras in one's own power, and to shift them in and out, so that one knows how to make precisely the difference in perspectives and affective interpretations useful for knowledge. If we continuously affirm a multiplicity of perspectives, only then does theoretical nihilism, the devaluation of the highest values, cease to be a problem for humanity. Instead, it is a source of great overcoming. Zarathustra states, quote, you must wish to consume yourself in your own flame. How could you wish to become new unless you had first become ashes? I love him who wants to create over and beyond himself and thus perishes. Thus spoke Zarathustra! And only then does our willing cease to be a willing towards nothingness, and becomes willing which affirms existence. I say unto you, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. I say unto you, you still have chaos in yourselves. So, is there a point to existence? To getting out of bed? Well, yes, there's many points to existing, and many ways of getting out of bed, but you will never find them beyond this world, and you will never find eternal points that are unassailable. Your existence has meaning only if you are willing to embrace and affirm the differences inherent and primary in a world which is to all eternity chaos. We asked in the beginning if we are destined to be forgotten, and we asked it as if it was an undesirable outcome. But forgetfulness is not necessarily a bad thing. One needs to be able to forget in order to create the new. Every repetition is always a repetition of something new, unique, novel, but only if we're willing to accept each from a new, unique, novel perspective. But before you forget about me, I must not forget about my several patrons who use their mighty exchange value to reaffirm my existence. For as little as $2 a month, just $2 itty bitty dollars, you too can help produce the repetition of Strange Corners, with each nook and cranny and overcoming of the last. There is no strangest corner, but there are eternally stranger ones. Or don't, cause it doesn't fucking matter. Well, you lay it down, let me see your hand. Show me what you got. You're always talking, but you're not playing. It doesn't match your face. Gotta find my way away from this place. Can you take me now? I want it real. Are you afraid of me now? You afraid of me now? Do you feel it? Do you feel that I can see your soul? Do you feel it? Do you feel it? Do you feel the beat in your heart? I want it real. Run away with me now. I want it real. Run away from me now. Do you feel? Do you feel it? Do you feel that I can see your soul?
From a certain point of view.